need to focus on each, in this question, on each of these, you need to discuss the act and the intent. That's important, an act and the intent. Okay. So I think we can do B.
So B is, would Z be liable as an accessory before the fact? What do you need to be liable as an accessory?
Okay, this specifically focuses on the statement that Z made.
Because it inspired X to do it anyway, he got his friends and everything to be there, but he was also present at the crime, and accessories before the fact aren't present, right?
Okay, so he makes the statement, then X is going to fight anyway, so then Z gets his friends to come there. The question is, does that statement make Z an accessory before the fact?
His intent wasn't to encourage it. His intent was to discourage it.
Okay, so you're saying that there was no intent to incite or counsel or advise or encourage X. So he didn't share, or she didn't share X's intent. Right. How about the act? Is this an act? Is this act sufficient to be a part?
No. I would say.
Its problem is, but X interpreted this as being encouraged. So,
yeah.
But you're saying that, but Z probably is not an accessory for the fact because of the intent and the act.
Right.
So.
Is the taxi driver T liable as an accessory after the fact? Why not?
Well, he didn't have any knowledge that he had committed a felony. He had no idea. He just saw him laying on the side of the road. The only way he could ever know that even if he came close to committing a crime was when he fainted on the way out, but he had no idea it was a felony.
I would say that, like, one, he doesn't share any intent to commit a crime, and he's not there during the felony, and, like, I think that, like, the fact that it's all over and the felony's over after the fight, so he's not even an accomplice to it, even if he's driving him away from it.
Taking him to the hospital will be the act, because he took him to the hospital. And the fact that he was unaware that he was in an illegal fight and take him to the hospital, I mean, he will not be guilty of an accessory after the fact because he didn't know. His intentions by taking him to the hospital were not to hinder his arrest.
Does X thanks the driver for taking X to the hospital before the police arrived to arrest him?
Yeah, I mean, but he tells him that when he's at the hospital already. So, like, there's, on the fact, there's nowhere that he says to him while taking him to the hospital. He says that to him after he takes him to the hospital. So even though he tells them, oh, thank you for taking me here before I get arrested, he will not be guilty because he didn't know that he was not aware that until he took them to the hospital.
Okay, so what is do you have a different intent for accessory after the fact? So what is that? People use no.
Oops.
What does your intent have to be?
To cover up the crime. And
is that what it says, to cover up the crime? What?
To aid him and get, like,
To escape.
it's like driving a getaway car from the fight, but that's not what he was doing. His intent was to get him some help because he didn't know what he was listening.
Okay, so earlier you used the word no. Why was that important?
He didn't know. He has to have the intent to
why would you, so what's beyond that, getting away from, you said, so you need to know about that a felony's been committed, I presume?
Yes.
From what you just said. So what is the intent that you're gonna need? What do you need to show the intent of the taxi driver was true? You said to get away from the scene of the crime. What more specifically, what do you need to show?
Knowledge.
What's the intent? What does that taxi driver have as their purpose when they get in the car? What does it mean, accessory after the fact? What does the taxi driver have to intend to have?
Help him escape
Help him escape, so more specifically.
from a crime that he knows about.
True, but more specifically, we have to have the intent for the defendant to blank and blank.
Take affirmative action?
Okay, there has to be an affirmative act, that's a good point, it can't be mere silence. But what specific intent do I, if I had to define accessory after the fact, what does my intent have to be? To take someone away from the scene of a crime, more specifically?
To aid the felon?
Aid in what sense?
Conceal or assist?
To aid, to assist in what way?
To help escape.
Escape, more specifically, what, escape from what?
Well, he didn't
Police.
have a criminal intent to get the tax.
So, I'm an accessory after the fact, I drove the defendant away, I'm guilty. Why? My intent, I knew a felony was occurred and I had the intent to what?
Or help the perpetrator escape from the crime?
Escape, that's, escape what?
Arrest.
Arrest, prosecution, apprehension. So, more generally. Okay.
So the next question. What if Z asked Z's friend F to email people and ask them to attend the fight to support X, and F wrote and sent the email, but his hard drive crashed and the emails never reached recipients? Would F be guilty of solicitation under the Model Penal Code? So what are the requirements for that?
There has to be a request. There has to be a request even if it doesn't reach the party, as soon
Okay,
as
so,
there's
so again, we need to talk about intents and acts. So,
the intent would be to request assistance or, request what they want.
so solicit means to ask, to request, to encourage, so some act of that nature. Okay, so, and what is, and my intent has to be what? And the minute I make that statement,
Your intent is for your request to reach the parties.
when I say, will you kill somebody, what's my intent?
For me to do it,
Right, so my intent is
for
for
them
you
to have
to
them.
commit that crime. That's my purpose, for you to commit that crime. So how about, so why is this why is this, but how can I have, but this email crashes, so what's our, so what's our problem?
Well,
Is this solicitation?
he has the intent of doing the act, and he does commit the act, but, if the act is never committed, like, to the people, if he never solicits those people, even though he has the intent and the act being, like, performed, like, the act doesn't fully get carried out, because the people never
So
reach
you
it.
would say not guilty?
Not guilty just because they don't reach it, but he does have the intent and the act.
I think guilty.
I would say he's guilty. Because
Solicitation is complete once the act of the time part. It doesn't have to reach the other party.
yeah, and they were both.
Okay, so under the model New Mexico case, Cotton, it said that the act solicitation required that you communicate with the other party. That may not be the case in the model penal code if you look at that case. So, so again, each of these, you say, what is the intent, what is the act, and that's how you approach each of these questions. Because otherwise, so that's what you need to show in each one of these. I had the intent, and I had the act, and I did, and I was or was not a party. So they're all pretty straightforward. Okay. I'm going to go to 2 here.
So, the first part of question number 2 asks, is H guilty of an attempt to intentionally kill a deer outside of hunting season under the objective test? So what does the objective test focus on? Investigate before that.
It requires him and comes extremely close to his mission.
And does H come extremely close?
Are we doing the same thing here, intent and act?
Okay, well first, on act, who can explain the difference between the subjective test and the objective test? It says, is H guilty of an attempt to intentionally kill a deer outside of hunting season under the objective test, under the subjective test? Did H have the required intent?
So like, for example, the objective would be like you come extremely close to doing it, like the book said, in arson, you pour like the gas all over, where the subjective test would be more like the intent. And if you go there with a can, but you never do, you stop and you never, well, you get arrested before you do anything with it. That would be like the difference.
So the objective test, we look at the act and whether it comes very close to carrying the crime out. Subjective test, we just need an act that can persuade us that the individual has the requisite intent. So the objective test gives someone a chance to change their mind. Subjective test was saying once they have the intent, they're probably going to carry it out. We don't want to wait beyond that point. So in this case, so that those are the 2 tests. So first question is whether we have an act that satisfies those 2. And what is the intent that you need? What is the intent that you're going to need?
He was about to pull the trigger.
Okay, so why is that important?
Because, I mean, this is outside of hunting season, and you would not be outside hunting season, he would have done it. And
Okay, but
if he was
what does
done,
my intent have to be for an intent?
His intent is to kill the deer,
yeah,
and so,
Okay, so more specifically, I want to kill the deer. Is that
Outside of hunting season.
outside of hunting season? That's kind of a fact that it's important for our intent. So I want to kill a deer outside of hunting season. So what specifically is the intent requirement?
To want to carry out that crime, to take steps forward to making that crime become really close to committing it, which he did when he was aiming and right before he pulled the trigger, police officer got him.
Okay, so we have an act that comes very close to completing the crime, but that's the act. And you said the intent is to accomplish the crime,
Right.
and there's also another intent that's involved.
well, he has the rifle with him, so his intent is clear that he's looking to use it. And that like shows that he's going to use it on the deer, and he points it at the deer. So like the pointing of it at the deer is like clarifying his intent.
So we have to have the intent to undertake a substantial step towards the completion of the crime and the intent to complete the crime. So we need both of these aspects. But what else is involved in this question that makes it complicated?
the criminal intent.
Think somebody-